I think it's not a self-improvement or self-development, because it's not about so much, about developing a self, which I think is something that we take for granted without actually examining what it actually means. Because exactly that's also the topic for today. And the topic is our starting point is not fabricated. And that means, I think that's the interesting part, because it has to do with who we are, it has to do with what we take ourselves to be. Because when I look around, or when I grew up, there were so many times it's like there's something that we take for granted, which is basically who we are. And then basically, if there's a starting point, which is like, let's say, field zero, it would be here. What I notice is anything we do, whether we do mindfulness, meditation, yoga, anything, I feel, at least that's what I see, is we always start here. Meaning, I feel bad, I feel not good enough, I feel I need something else, I feel I need to do more, and so on. And that, for me, that always starts here, which is already part of the problem. So what for me made a big difference is to question even that, so to go a step back and not take us for granted, whatever we think we identify with. You can take a workshop that talks about who am I, and then, well, let's start like this. Let's say if you go to a coaching session with a coach, you usually go into the question, how do I get from where I am to my objective, some goal I have in my life. So what's the most effective way? Let's say I'm always worried about something. How can I be less worried? Or I want to become better in my career. How can I reach it? So that's sort of the question, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? And then there's the question, second question is, usually if, at some point, if you, let's say, always reach what you want, you feel like you're still not happy. So then the second question is, what do I really want? And there's also, many workshops about this. What do I really want in my life? Is it in line with my vision and all this stuff? But then, even if you do that, even if you always do what you want, let's say you find the right job that you want to do, you travel around the world and you realize maybe there's still something missing, and then it comes to the question of who am I? And in those workshops, hi, come in.
Sorry.
Hi. And then in those workshops, about who am I, you do things like, you can play this game and saying, okay, just tell me like who you think you are. And then, people, they say their name, they say, I'm from this country, I'm that many years old, and so on. And then you can always question, is that really true, or is that really who you are? Does that really define you? And if you really look at everything that we usually define ourselves to be, you can always say, no, I'm not that. Because, for instance, if you say I'm from Germany, it doesn't really define me. It may define some cultural conditionings that I have, maybe the language that I speak, but it's not really what I am, like ultimately, like what it feels. So the whole discussion, the talk today, is about exactly that. It's about the starting point where we go, because as I said earlier, we usually start at field one, although, because that's what we take for granted. We don't see anything. We don't question or examine that. But today we want to see what is it maybe that's field zero, that's going a step back and examining it. Not in a weird way or something, but just using what we have, our perception system or whatever, consciousness, to understand what this could be. So we just question the obvious, which, exactly. So, as I said, the topic is our starting point is fabricated. So why is it fabricated? So what we usually identify ourselves with is usually, let's say in our society, it's like a separate entity. Meaning, I'm sitting here, there are sitting a few other people here, and I have an entity in myself, meaning I have a free will, I can think what I want, I can feel what I want, I can do what I want, and I'm just here, I'm born, this body is born, then I identify with this body, and I know the nature of this body is, at least, I have seen all the cases so far in my life, and all the other people that the body will die at some point, and so I will die. So there's a separate entity, and this will, since I think I'm born, I live a life, and then I will die. And since this is the case, I'm also worried that I may die one day, and so on. So So that's sort of what's happening, you know. If you ask me, like in my life, you know, this has never felt really like whole to me. It has always felt it's a bit weird, you know. There's this analogy which I like. So there's horses and there's a cart, right? Which basically the horses pull the cart. And if you take this analogy with what I just said about what's starting point 0 and 1, it feels like my life has always felt like the cart is in front of the horses, but it's supposed to be the other way around. So the cart is in front of the horses, and the horses always run towards the cart, and it stops, it crashes. And just because, you know, like we usually make ourselves feel better just because we say, oh, you know, I feel bad, I hate my life, I hate my job, I hate whatever, my partner. But, you know, if I look at everyone else, I'm still well off because people are hungry and all this stuff, you know. So we have come to a very low, or actually a high tolerance level. We tolerate a lot of bullshit, let's say, just comparing ourselves to the rest and thinking, okay, that there's even poor people that have it worse in a way. But you know, if you're really honest with yourself and see what's happening, I think there's something wrong with that, as I said, with the horses. So as I said, like if it comes to identification, I think identification plays a huge part in this, because I think in this example of the horses and the cart, like, you know, what we usually take ourselves to be is this body and this thoughts usually. We identify with thoughts, we think thoughts are about us and from us, and that's why we put all our interest there. But at the same time, that's just, you know, what's actually happening is there's something that we are, and that's always there, that's prior to what we think we are, and that's the important thing. It's always the case, it's always there. And then then thinking that I'm this body, that I was the thinker of this thought, that I'm the doer of the action, comes afterwards. That's the important thing. There's something that's always so, then there's a thought about who I am, so I think I'm this body, I think I was doing this, I think there's a thought coming and I think I'm the thinker of the thought. You know, if we were the thinker of our thoughts, just imagine for a moment, like let's say you have an important meeting tomorrow, it's a very important day tomorrow, you would want your thoughts to stop from, I don't know, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., right? Because you just want to be great tomorrow, look great and everything. But what happens is actually there's more thoughts coming, there's a lot of worries about the day. So what does it tell us? Does it tell us that we are the thinker of the thoughts, and as the thinker of the thoughts, we are in control of the thoughts? Or does it mean that maybe there's just thoughts coming and going, and maybe we just, and that's exactly the point, that once the thoughts are coming, we claim them to be ours, and that's just an afterthought, you know. But there's something that's aware of the thoughts, and there's something aware of this whole everything, and that's prior. So my point is, so that's exactly the point. So if we take ourselves to be that afterthought, and that's the beautiful thing. It's exactly the nature of what's happening every day. Something is happening, and I pretend, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to a party, and then, I don't know, I leave let's say I leave already at 11, and everybody's still having a great time, and I say I'm leaving, and then, you know, I feel like, I don't know, I want to leave, but then the thing is, we claim, oh yeah, I have to leave now because I need to sleep, and I have a very important thing tomorrow. But, you know, in this example, what's actually happening, and that's what I observe for me, is that something decided that I'm going to leave early, and then because I pretend I have free will, and I pretend that I'm in control of my thoughts and decisions and everything, I make this up, and this decision is happening, obviously. It's not that it's not happening, but I claim it that I was the one taking the decision. It's like almost like playing God, you know. It's like we play God so much. I remember, like, as a child, you know, we're sort of in the trust or sort of under the wings of our parents, which is a great thing because we feel like we don't have to worry much, we don't have to think about, and things are just happening very naturally, very nicely. And I realized in my life, you know, the more I felt I had control, the more my life became very exhausting. I had to think about so many things. Life became very difficult. There were so many decisions to be taken. And I realized that it's not inherent in us, but it's something that we develop over time. And, you know, one of the examples that I sometimes say is, in the introduction to The Simpsons, the cartoon, there's this scene at the beginning where they zoom into the little baby, and it's sort of in the steering wheel, and then it zooms out to the street, so it looks like she's driving the car. But then it zooms out, and you see that it was actually a mocking wheel, and then basically the wife, the mother, is sitting there and really driving. So that's how I feel like life is. It's not only that we think we are in control, but it actually feels as if, it really feels like this. And as I said, that's the nature of this claiming of the self-centeredness. We sometimes, I also like the example of this mushroom. We spoke about it a few times, but I think it's very good to have this repetition. We spoke about this mushroom. There's a mushroom in nature. I don't remember the name of it, but it's basically like the only way to reproduce for this mushroom is that it has spores, and basically there's usually no other mushroom around, and the only way to reproduce is that it burrows into an ant, it hacks into the ant's brain, and then it tells the ant where to go, meaning to the next mushroom, and then once it reached the mushroom, basically the spore kills the ant, and out of it grows the mushroom. So that's happening in nature every day. And for me, that's sort of, if you take this analogy to who we are, if you ask that ant, like at some point, once it's already hacked into, where are you going? It would be like, oh, I have to go to this forest because it's very important, I have a meeting there and I'm meeting someone. So, and that's the thing, because what's happening is there's some, let's say, a parasite, which is the spore. There's some parasite not in us, but there's something that we observe. And then what happens is we take that to be ourselves, and that's why we are driven by this parasite and not by what we really are. It's like almost like, someone is breaking into your house, and instead of saying, hey, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. You take this robber basically for a family member, and then you let them rob everything and go. It's like this, it's like not recognizing that this is not us, but it's something from outside. And that's, I think, something that's happening with us all the time. If you just take, for instance, thoughts or even feelings, or even like if you go further, even this body. So this is something that we take as a starting point, which is already on field one, which is an afterthought. And then, what happens is when, like as I said, thoughts are just happening. I like also the analogy of what we are is the sky, the blue sky, and what thoughts are and feelings are is basically clouds that come and go. And when we identify with the clouds, it may be that a feeling just takes us over, or a thought is so heavy because we don't see what we are, and we sort of forget what we are. But what I like in this analogy is because what we are is always the sky. And I think that's also a very important point here. Because, usually what happens is also, especially in self-development or self-motivation and everything, is people tell you, or they make you believe, but actually they can only make you believe or tell you if you give that outside the power, is basically you are here, point whatever, A, and if you listen to us, or if you really want to work on yourself, if you really want to earn $1 million in your life, or whatever it is, then, or if you follow us, or do whatever, if you believe in our guru, then at some point you get here. That's sort of the fallacy or the trick that we fall for so many times in so many different things. And that's basically the trick also of this whole claiming that what we are. So basically, and I think in this example it's so important to question that first thing, saying you are, like, let's say in this example with the sky and the clouds, is you are the cloud. But and then if we take this cloud to be a separate entity or a body, means you're the cloud, and at some point the cloud goes. But what we are is the sky. And the sky in this example is, for instance, I don't know, you can call it awareness. But I really like not to talk so much about what we are, but more about what we are not, because when we see what we are not, this what we are comes automatically. You know, it's like, you know, we were talking, I think, last few times we were talking about this, saying, you know, here in this talk here on this discussion, I don't talk to you about what you are, but I'm trying sort of to talking to you who you are about you who's sitting here. You know, that's a big difference, because, you know, let's say you see that a lot in spirituality, right? There's this confusion between the form and the formless. Meaning, you know, and that has to do with this fabricated point. What we do is we assume we're in field one, so we're this body, we're the thoughts, we're an entity, and we want to become the non-form, sort of, I don't know, enlightened or happy or whatever we want to call it, as the form. But, you know, in this example, that's exactly the point. We can never, like, this form can never become the non-form, because we are already what we are. You know, there's no doubt about it, right? We are what we are. But the problem is that we identify with something, and then it takes so much energy to try to become, that's the point, you know, we try to become as this body something that it can never become. And that's like the vicious circle. Like, you know, like I think life will become much easier if you want what you can easily get. Let's say you want to become, I don't know, you want to buy a pair of jeans, and you just go to the store, you buy a pair of jeans. That's not like, you know, in spirituality or self-improvement, people, they want to become enlightened, right? And as I said, a person, or if you identify with something, you can never become enlightened, because you are already what you're looking for. And that's an important sentence, I think. You are what you're looking for. And, you know, I'm not saying you should ignore that you feel bad, or you should ignore that, I don't know, that you have problems or whatever. I think it's very important to face everything. But I think it makes a huge difference if you already are what you're looking for, or where you want to be, versus you think you're inferior and you're not good enough, and you, I don't know, everybody else is much better and more beautiful and richer and everything, and then you try to become something. That's like, as I said, it's an endless journey which doesn't make any sense, and which has a lot of frustration, suffering, and everything with it. It's much easier, for me at least, that if you understand or see, or even if you just entertain the possibility that you are already where you want to be forever. And there's nothing to do for that, nothing, really nothing. That you don't have to do meditations, you don't have to go retreat, you don't have to get a bigger house, you don't have to have a better partner, nothing like this. That's it, like you have arrived. But then, you know, if you hear this, the mind is like, come on, but this cannot be that easy, there's something, but you know, I know it doesn't feel like this, you know, and maybe if I hear it, or if I listen to a certain person, I feel like, you know, I feel like this, but then I write after, but this is all made up, that's fabricated, that's what I mean by fabricated. And that's the question, you know, what do you give faith? Do you give faith to those thoughts that, let's say in this example with the parasite, that is this parasite that sort of hacked into you? Or do you give faith to maybe, to I don't know what is, or to who you are? And that's a big difference, right? So, you know, it's like, I mean, like at the end of the day, it's very simple. If you just see what you're not, it's very simple. As I said earlier, like let's take the example with the thoughts. I think it's a very powerful thing, because, you know, when I grew up, like let's say, I mean, obviously as a baby, you don't identify with thoughts, or even as a child, you know, thoughts just come and you use them and done. But at some point, I don't know, when the language sort of establishes more, at some point, we don't make a difference between what we are and what we think. We just, like, I like the sentence, you know, if you don't see it, you're looking from it. I like that sentence a lot, because if you don't see that thoughts come and go, like clouds, then you are looking from them. And when you're looking from thoughts, you know what, you can define the life that happens is, you think you're worried, you regret the past, you're worried about the future. You regret the past, you worry about the future. Because there's no, thoughts don't have the ability to be in the now. It's not possible. We cannot grasp the now, or let's say the non-time, because what we are is sort of not in time. We are not happening in time. So that's, you know, so your life is basically defined by exactly that. You worry about the past, so I shouldn't have I shouldn't have made this decision. I should have talked to them like this. I had this anger at that person, so I shouldn't have done this. And we regret not just like the last week or the last 2 weeks, but sometimes 5 years or 10 years. Then we think about, we're not happy here or tomorrow on Saturday because we're thinking already about next week when we have to start working or we have to do this and that. So that's basically, if we're very lucky, maybe we have a few drinks on the weekend and then, we numb ourselves down because we just cannot take it anymore, and then we try to do anything else that makes us happy or gives us some relief from this, and then maybe we're lucky and have a few hours where this craziness is not happening, I'm sort of already also exaggerating a bit, but I think, when we really feel what's happening, this is sort of the definition of our life if we are identified with these thoughts. So then, then that's the point. So if we are able to observe the thoughts just as they come and go and not be in it, but see it from the outside, then we're able to see them how they come and go, and we see also that we are not the producer of them. And that brings a huge relief. Why? Because, why we're so obsessed? It feels like we're obsessed with thoughts because we think they are about us and they are from us. So obviously we put all our interest of attention. So many people, because they also are looking for relief and they don't want to party all the time and do other stuff and travel the world all the time, but they're still looking for some relief. They're doing yoga, they're doing mindfulness or meditation but it helps obviously people, but for me it doesn't solve the cause. It's just maybe it helps to soften the symptoms. But and why? Because we still think it's our thoughts, and as I said, the nature of thoughts is always to jump from the past to the future, and as the further we go from the now in a way, the more we feel like nervous and all this stuff. But however, the funny thing is that it's not possible not to be here and now. It's not possible. It's only possible if we buy into this, if we give this, the power to actually tell us that it's possible. And then when we think it's possible, then we have to read books and we have to go, to some people, some experts, and they have to tell us, oh yeah, I can tell you how you can get into the now, but that's the point. So yes, it helps to meditate, yes, it helps to do yoga, and for some people it's great, but there can be a danger, because if we think we are the meditator, then it's a danger. Meditating as such, sitting in silence is great, I think. But as soon as we claim it and identify as it, then it can be a problem. So, but the point is, the cause of it is, as I said, is the identification that it's our thoughts and it's about us. So like, I give you another example, like let's say, let's say there's Martin, and Martin has very strong worries about his future and he has huge regrets about the past. And how much does it affect you? You maybe if he's your friend, maybe you have some compassion and affection, but you never worry about Martin 30 years ago, what he should have done or not. Or you never worry about Martin if he's gonna be fine in the future or not, because you hear it and it's like gone. But if it's about you, if it's me, then, oh my God, you can go on and on and on. But the point here is not, it's actually not happening. So you can argue, yeah, but it's really me, so it's all about me. No, it's not. It's like, that's for me the misidentification with what we're not, because it's just about the separate entity that we're not. So understanding that thoughts are not from us and about us, that cures already a lot, because you're not obsessed with it anymore. If you, like let's say, as an example, if you put your attention on something that's nervous or that's fearful or that has some tension, the more we put our attention on it, the more we also get nervous, right? Like, let's say you watch a horror movie or you see someone suffering or whatever. The more we put our attention there, the more we get also into that mode. So, and let's say if you're in nature and there's some beautiful landscape, there's, you're in the mountains and there's a beautiful lake and you're hiking and there's nothing around, or you ski, and then if you put your attention there, you also calm and so on. So, right, And that's the point. So if we put our attention to our thoughts, then of course, because their nature is to be agitated, then of course we also get nervous. The more we put our thoughts, the more we think, we hear the sentence, don't take yourself so seriously, or take it more lighthearted. Yeah, exactly. But that's just maybe some tip, but it doesn't really help, because it doesn't go against or at the cause. So, and how can you do that? Don't believe me, because I think the most important thing is that you find it out for yourself. And how can you do it? Yeah, you just observe your thoughts one day, or whenever you want to, and you see that they just come and go. You can, in a way, if you really look at it, of course they can be influenced by where you are. Let's say if you're in nature, then there's probably different thoughts than when you're in the city tomorrow afternoon, and people are running, shopping and so on. Then of course it's different. But no matter where you are, they get influenced by your environment. But there's not a producer. There's not a producer. I think that's an important point. So basically, as I said, this whole self-motivation, self-improvement thing, for me, doesn't really work, because it always starts, as I said at the beginning, it always starts with the assumption that we are a separate entity, that we already, we take ourselves to be something that we're not, and that's where we start usually. We pre-assume that. We pre-assume the existence of a non-existing thing. Like Ramana Maharshi was saying that one. We pre-assuming the existence of a non-existing thing, and then trying to get salvation for that. That's exactly the vicious cycle that we are in. So we pre-assume we are something, then we're looking for salvation for that thing through, I don't know, I think he says something like yoga or whatever, or self-inquiry, and then does that not, and how could we find true salvation if that's actually not even happening? You see, by doing that, we're actually reinforcing what we're not. If you try to look for a solution for something you're not, you're actually reinforcing the idea of what you are not. That's happening constantly. So it's like we're sort of ignoring constantly what we are by assuming we're something else, you see? And as I said, we can try to find relief in many things, but at least for me, nothing has worked like this. I was very interested in psychology. I was very interested in philosophy. I was interested in spiritual stuff. But as I said, one of the biggest fallacies that I see out there is the confusion between the form and the formless. We assume we are the thoughts and a separate entity in this body, and then we are looking to make this more sound with everything. But by doing that, it just brings us further away from where we are, because I think the most important thing is to see, and that's the nice message, that we already are what we're looking for. And I think also very interesting in this discussion is, especially when maybe you haven't heard it so much, is that if you hear that as the body or as the thoughts, this is not a good message to hear, because it sounds, first of all, maybe crazy. And it sort of means, wow, so what do I have to do? But, it's sort of this, what's playing God is sort of taking the power away, which is like, shit, where's my power? But, and as I said, that's not the point. For me, the point is more to maybe send messages, to what you really are, and see maybe that what you're not. And I think that's the most important thing, to just understand what you're not. Yeah. And, so another analogy that I have is, everything here, it feels like a dream, or like a dreaming, right? This is like all a dream. And since we, or this example of, let's start with this one, the form and the formless. So if we identify, imagine you are dreaming, and in the dream you are identifying as one of those action figures, right? You're identifying as Benjamin, or you're identifying as someone else. And in the dream, it feels as if it was real. Because you are part of the dream, right? You're the dreamt. So as soon as we take ourselves to be the dreamt, everything else around us can affect us fully. So I'm in the dream, my girlfriend is cheating on me, and then it affects me in the dream. I have feelings, it feels real and everything. But then, and what's the solution? I could find a solution within the dream, maybe, I don't know, talk to my friend, go to a psychologist, or I don't know, do whatever. And I would maybe feel better or whatever in the dream, but this would not come anywhere close to a solution as if I just wake up and I see that it was a dream. And that's exactly the point. And as I said, this is sort of the dreaming, all the form, everything that's happening here is just sort of the play of Maya, or just the form of what's happening, but it's actually not happening, because what we are is reality, and we are sort of lending the reality to everything else what's happening. So what has happened, maybe if you can say, it just seems like all of this is happening, and it seems like we are in this, and this is affecting us, but things can only affect us when we are part of this dreamt, when you're the dreamt, everything in the dreaming can affect us. So if I'm in this dreaming world, everything and I take myself to be this action figure, everything it has the ability to affect me. But when you realize and you wake up and it was just a dream, then nothing can affect you. It doesn't have the ability to affect you, And that's, as I said, it all sounds vague, or like, if we try usually to put our mind around this and thoughts and try to understand it from where we are, it usually doesn't work. And I also invite you not to try to do that. But for instance, I give an example. I was once like, I liked always Alanis Morissette. She's like a Canadian singer, like many years ago, and she said, she read this book and it changed her mind, her life, and then I read it. The name was Who Am I? By Sean Klein. He was like some French, I don't know, philosopher, or he was doing some non-duality thing. And then, I read the book, and I had no idea, I didn't understand anything. But at the same time, I had intuitively, I really knew that this guy has sort of the solution for, let's say, back then, my problem. Meaning, I was seeking, I was very frustrated, like, I don't know, on a high level, I think, but I was frustrated with my situation, because I felt like I was running against the wall all the time, although I was, from the outside, my life was great. I was great in school, I was great as a student, I had a great job, blah, blah, blah. But, to the outside, it may have looked great, but I didn't feel that way. I felt like, what is this life, really? This cannot be it. And then, as I said, I read the first few pages of this book. I had no idea. I could not put my mind around it. But then I knew there was a solution, and that's, I think, that's how it is with this as well. I think we cannot, like, that's the sentence. We cannot try to solve the problems that brought them in the first place. For me, it's like, in a way, the thoughts or the mind, that's sort of seemingly creating the problems, but not thoughts as such. I think they're harmless, but the identification with them, the glue, gluing them to them. Oh my God, like it feels like we're enslaved to thoughts, like let's say you have a great afternoon at 3 o'clock on Saturday, and then you have a great time, and all of a sudden this thought comes, but maybe I have cancer, because I have this thing here, and I know my friend, he had the same, so maybe there's a likelihood. We're making like up crazy stories in our mind because it's about us. Anything can happen, right? There's so many likelihoods. And then all of a sudden, although nothing happened at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, nothing happened, just that thought came, and it just kills our whole afternoon. So thoughts or feelings have the power to destroy like a day. And but as I said, they only have that power if we think they're about us, and they're not about us. Like, if as I said, don't believe me, but just observe it for yourself, whether thoughts just come and go, or whether you're producing them and you're fully in control, and so on. So yeah, that's I think that's a crucial point. And in the analogy of the horses and the cart, so if and I think that's the beauty of it. So if we start from field 1, so assuming many things that we are not, then life it won't work. We will never be fully happy. We will always, there is always a problem, right? Because if you really observe what's happening is let's say you reach a goal, you reach something, let's say you had the goal of moving to the city, or you wanted that job, or you wanted a partnership or whatever, you reach it, and then you think, from now on I'm always happy. And there's those circumstances, which we always blame for everything. So but come on, my partner, he's not acting the way he should be, So it's always everything else fault, it's never us. But if we really look at the consistency of all our problems, the only common thing is we were involved. There's, many people who change their partners all the time, and it's always, when you listen to them, it's always their partner's fault, Oh yeah, she was just not the right girl, she was doing this, she was weird, or the boss, people, they never find the right manager. But then, if you really look at the common factor in all of this, it's always you, the same person, So then it makes sense maybe to question that and see maybe there's something wrong with what I think I am. There's nothing wrong with who we are, but there's maybe something wrong with I think I am, because we're always running against the wall. So if you really observe your life, isn't there always a drive to go on, to achieve the next goal and to do something? And isn't it always sort of failing in a way? So failing meaning, even if you reach your goal, it doesn't really feel like you have arrived. But we are all seeking that feeling that, okay, finally we have arrived. And that feeling is exactly what we are. And that's the funny thing, is that, in this sentence, we are what we are looking for. Or you can say what's looking is what we're looking for. So we're always looking for something, but we are it. It doesn't say you have to do 30 years of yoga. It doesn't say you have to do 30 retreats in Thailand. It doesn't say you have to finally feel good enough. It doesn't say that. It just says what's looking is what you're looking for. And that's what all of us are looking for. Exactly that. Some of us, we look for it in a career. We just go crazy about careers. We don't have time for family. We just want to have a career. Some of us look for it in drugs. This just gives us a relief. Some of us look for it in a family. You want to have a big family. You have children, and then finally you have children, and then you realize maybe they're nice, but then there's so many trouble and problems and everything. It's still maybe one day. It's always like having this carrot in front of our eyes and always going for others. But just seeing that, it tells us maybe the system that we have put our faith in has failed, maybe. If we realize that, but the thing is, we usually don't admit that to ourselves, because we think we are that doer, and we wouldn't admit it, never, because we think we are that, but we are not. Once we realize we're not, we can also say, hey, the system has failed, maybe I'm not that. And then, as I said, once we realize what we're not, then, it seems like then what we are comes more and more to the foreground, You will feel it, that your life becomes easier. Still things happen, but it's not about what things happen in your lives, but it's about how we cope with it or how we deal with it. There's a whole different feel to it. And because you will also realize that, life events, they don't have any power to affect you at all. Zero. But they only have the power to affect you. What has the power to affect you is the thoughts and the feelings and everything that comes with it. And that's exactly, as I said, coming from the self-obsessed, self-centeredness. There's a huge self, and it's all about me. And that's basically this fabricated self that you call yourself. But as I said, this is just an assumption, or just an unexamined assumption that we have, but that we always start from. Everything we do, everything is happening to us. Somebody says, we realize that somebody writes us an email or says something to us, and we go they say something like, yeah, I don't know, let's say that somebody doesn't invite you to a party and it's relatively close, and then everybody else goes and you don't go, and you know what meaning we put into that is crazy. It could be that maybe that person just forgot it or whatever it is, but you know what happens is we go on and on and on. Why didn't they invite us? But then this and this, and maybe all of this is just a story, and this story is created because it's a huge self-obsession. You know, we would never, you know, if somebody else doesn't get invited to a party, if I don't know, Paul doesn't get invited to a party, we would like, oh, okay, it's a pity, but that's it. We would not waste any time and energy about thinking, oh, but maybe he meant this, maybe this. No, that's it. But it's just, you know, it's not about that. That's the important point. It's not about that. It's about us, but it's about that we take ourselves to be something that we're not. That's the point. It's not, you know, because that's the first argument that comes to your mind. But it's me. But I have to be self-preserved or whatever. You know, it's me. But it's really me. No, it's not. That's the whole point. And you know, as I said, I think the most important thing is here as well is that you don't believe any word that I say, because that's not the point. The point is, you know, I just want to, I don't know, invite you to entertain the idea that maybe if you want to maybe have a more lighthearted life or whatever, maybe just examine, you know, what's maybe what you take yourself to be, and that's it. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. So if you, like, now we just open for discussion, or if you have questions or comments or anything, we can just discuss it. But as I said, you know, it's very hard or almost impossible to wrap our minds around this, because then we usually come from what we assume or have unexamined. But yeah, you know, there's something, you know, if it resonates with you, like, you know, try it out. If it doesn't resonate with you, then it's also great, because, you know, this is not about I don't know, believing something new that you hear, but it's just about, you know, at the end of the day, you just want to feel good in your day, what you do.
Thank you. I remember when I was at a previous meeting, and I heard the sentence that you're already there. I'm not sure if that was the whole sentence, but yeah, I think you said you are already there. Like, and today you said you are already what you're looking for, and when I heard the sentence "you're already there," it really, like, it really resonated with me, because in that moment I could feel like it kind of was true in that moment for me, like for a couple seconds, and today I was more, when I heard you are already what you're looking for. It's hard for me to get it or to feel it, because the thing that comes to my mind is no, I'm not. I'm looking for, like, yeah, let's say, to get enlightened, and then I look at myself and I think no, I'm not. So I don't really, yeah, get it or feel it, even though you maybe mean the same thing by those two sentences. But put in that words, I couldn't really, yeah, I didn't really get it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, many times I think, I don't know, maybe it was the words, because at some point, you know, we all have different associations with different words. So if it worked for you, I don't know, you are already what you are, or you have already arrived, or you don't have to do anything. But maybe for me, many times it was also that, you know, maybe in those few seconds that you mentioned, maybe, like, you know, it's almost like, you know, I was saying a lot, right? It's almost like shooting some messages at, you know, what you are, let's say. You're shooting some messages, and you know what we usually try to do is we try to sort of catch those messages as what we're not, you know, because we want to wrap our mind around, so we catch it like this. So I don't know, that's what I think is maybe what happened is in those few seconds that maybe you, oh yeah, I get it. Maybe one of the messages got through to, you know, what you are, and you have this moment like, oh yeah, I get it. But maybe today, maybe you were trying to catch it, or like, maybe not. I mean, that happened to me a lot, you know, as well. Like, you know, let's say I hear some guy speak, I don't know, in the car, and I'm like, wow, it's so clear to me. I get it. Like, you know, not I get it, but it's wow. It's like, you know, it's the insight that goes beyond insight or beyond doubts. You know, like it's that moment of clarity. We all have those moments, right? It's like, yeah, obviously it's like this. But then let's say you hear the message, maybe even the same message again from the same guy, maybe 3 weeks later, and it's like, I don't get it, you know? So I feel like it's more like, it can be, I don't know if it's like true, but it can be that in this one few seconds, maybe, as I said, the message got through and you heard it as what you are, because it resonated with you, and maybe now you heard it maybe as, maybe, you know, as, because maybe you heard it as a form, as what you're not, and maybe that obviously doesn't resonate then, you know, from that point. Because the, what, you know, what we take ourselves to be has never arrived, or it's never there. It always needs, because it doesn't have a reality on its own, you know. It always needs to do something in order to reinforce what it's not, sort of.
Oh, what was the last thing you said?
That yeah, maybe you heard the message, you know, as something you're not, because what we are, like, you know, what we take ourselves to be, like you know, as I said, this field one. Let's say we are our body, or we're an entity, a separate entity that's long lasting. It doesn't have a reality on its own. Because it's not real. Like, you know, the only real thing is what you are. That's the only real thing that exists. And what you are, but what you are is not what you take yourself to be. What you are is what you are. At any time, any given moment, no requirement necessary. You are. But what you take yourself to be, that has to be reinforced from moment to moment, again and again, because it's fabricated, you know. It doesn't have an existence in its own. It doesn't have a reality on its own. It can only seem as if it's real to you.
So, something else. You said the self-improvement does not work, or the workshops and
It works somehow, yeah, to some degree.
So why? Why? Can you explain it?
Yeah. So yeah, like, you know, so like, you know, let's start with what works or what doesn't work. But it works to some degree, meaning, you know, for me, self-improvement or self-development already assumes a self. You know, like a self as, you know, I'm Benjamin, and, you know, I'm not so happy with where I am now, but I want to be happy at some point. So I listen to, if I want to have more money, then I listen to somebody who has maybe already earned million, or who has millions now, and he can maybe give me the 10 ways how to become rich. Or if I'm not so happy, I go to someone who's maybe happier, and then he tells me I'm not happy and I can become happier, right? It's like, you know, I wanna improve that self, but in my point, the self is already this fabricated thing that what we're not, you know. So by improving or developing a self, it's reinforcing that false starting point that we are not. So, and how does it feel? Like, you know, as I said, it can help. You know, I know many people, let's say they start doing yoga, they go, I don't know, 3 times a week, and they feel lighter and better. So that helps. Or people start meditating, and it helps them to feel better. Or people go to workshops and, you know, I don't know, self-motivation, self-improvement, self-development, it helps. But my point is that, you know, if I really look deep down, that what, because, you know, I I mean, I was also into this, and when I see people speak or when they go to those workshops, I said it has an improvement, but for me the problem is that it reinforces something we are not. It feels great when you hear people speak about it, it feels great because they're in a great energy, but still it brings us in a cycle where we always look for more and more and more, because that it's never enough.
It's like acting in a new or another frame. It's not your frame. It's like
Say that again?
it's like a self-improvement. When you do it, it's like then you're acting in another frame. It's not your frame. It's something like you build up.
Yeah, in a way, but yeah, some people say, what do they say? I don't know, act like it and you become it or something like this. Fake it until you make it, right? It's like this, So I think, if you learn a technique, or I think that can work to some degree, but let's say you fake it until you make it. Let's say you pretend like you're a great presenter, although maybe you're not. And if you do it very often, I think you can become a great presenter, and that works as a technique. I think if you want to achieve a goal, I think that can work. But my point is a completely different one. My point is, as I said, as from a point of view of a self, it can improve your vision about you, your perspective about yourself. But I am putting out here a completely different point, which is maybe you are not that self that needs improvement, because if you are a self that needs improvement, that tells you automatically that you are not good enough, you're not full, you're not whole. And that's exactly, that's for me the frustrating part, is because I was never happy with that solution. I can do retreats, I can become calmer, I can do this. For me that was never fully satisfactory, because I was looking for a solution that works, that works without me having constantly to do something. And that's why, as I said, I think self-improvement, self-development works, but it doesn't solve the problem. I don't know. What do you think?
I feel it's the same. You work, in the end, the techniques, but it's not you.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, it just can be a lot of fun, and that's maybe
Exactly.
A better attitude to it, and if you look at it like rather something like a training. If you start doing any sports, in the beginning you go there and you feel really dumb, or you can't move in the way the others can, and then you do it for some time, and then it gets fun to do it, and it's a great thing. And that's the same for meditation. The first time everything is hurting and you sit down and it's terrible, and if you do it for some time, it's a great action to do, and you're really longing to do it, so something feels good, and it feels good. It's fun.
And I'm not judging it. Like I said, I think it's great when people meditate, I think it's great when people do yoga, I think it's great when people do self-development, I think it's all great. But my point is, as I said, a completely different one. My point is, if I, for instance, maybe you're familiar with Tony Robbins. He's in the US. He's this huge guy. He has a very, very strong energy. And if you listen to him for a while, you feel great. You feel like, wow, I can. I'm here, and I can. If I do this and this and this, I can change my wall and the wall of others, and I can achieve everything. And it feels great. But then, at least for me, the more I listen to him, the more I realize something doesn't feel right. There's something. I have to do so many things, but then I'm still not good, but then there's so many others. It still doesn't feel right. And my point is exactly that this whole thing, what's happening, the nature of the self is exactly that. You are never good enough, never ever. It's like we're playing a trick to ourselves. It doesn't matter where we are, how much money we have, wherever we are never good enough. So it's a trick that we play with ourselves. It's just a trick, because it just assumes we're not here at field 0, but we're at field 1. That's it. It's I don't know. It's very obvious, It's just we're playing a trick with ourselves, and we assume if somebody comes and says, hey, I can help you to bring you in the moment. I can help you to get you into the presence. Nobody can help you to bring you to the presence because you're already there. But if you buy into it and say, oh yeah, true, man, I don't feel, yeah. Like, those commercials, especially in the US, do you feel tired? Do you feel down after a long day working? Like, yeah, of course. Yeah, here are the pills, take those pills and everything will be fine. It's like that almost, you feel like you're not in the moment? Do you feel like you're not good enough? Yeah, I have the right seminar, you can go there, it's like that. I give you one example which I love. Like when I heard that for the first time, I had no idea. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think didn't make any sense. But I tell you anyway, because then once I realized, I think even a few years later, I was like, wow, this is so great. So I tell you, so there's this guy. So some guy comes to another guy and he says, hey, your wife is cheating on you. Like this guy's like, oh shit, man, this cannot be possible. This is crazy. Like, I don't know, I cannot believe it, this is crazy. And then he's like, yeah, how do you know? Oh, I don't know, what should I do? I'm clueless now. So he was like, yeah, I heard that they're gonna meet tonight at midnight. They're gonna meet in front of the church, in this park in the front of the church. And so he's like, oh shit, should I go there or should I not? Should I bring a gun or what should I do? I don't know. So then, I don't know, he decides, at some point he goes, and then he's always thinking, what should I do when I see them, and then will I confront them, or will I just leave them and do whatever, or I don't know, I have no clue. So he goes there already at 10, because he really wants to make sure that he's there when they meet. So he's climbing up a tree, and he's just waiting there for them. And then it's approaching, and he's getting more worried and more anxious and more nervous. Like the closer the midnight comes, and then it's 11:30, and he's sweaty and everything. And then 11:45, he's like out of his mind. He doesn't know what to do. And then it's midnight. He hears the bells of the church, and he's like, oh my God, I don't see anything yet. But maybe they're hiding behind the church, or maybe they went there. So he's completely out of his mind. And then it's like 12:15, they're still not there, maybe they're behind, so he's looking everywhere, they're nowhere, so he goes up the tree again. And then it's like 1 o'clock, and he's like, I give up. And then what happens is, in this moment, when he's like out of frustration, he's like, shit, I don't know what to do anymore, he realizes that he's not married. But that's exactly with this point, like when it comes to self-development, what you asked, that's exactly it. Like, we get so easily into like, yeah, I can help you to get into the moment, I can help you to get a $1 million, I can help you this. You're like, yeah, tell me, that's how we jump. Or like, you see all the solutions. But then, would you do it, let's say, if somebody comes and says, I can help you to get into the moment, and then you're like, yeah, please tell me how. Would you do it if you know you are in the moment? Obviously not. That would be a waste of time for everyone. But if you buy into the idea that you're not in the moment, then of course you do it. And of course you listen to anyone who would claim they have it. And if they tell you it takes 20 years, and you look at, that's the thing with spirituality. Like, how many people do you know they have meditated or have done spirituality for 30 years and they're still not there? Like, would you buy a car, that takes 30 years to get delivered, and you have to do all those things to get it? No, life can be easier than that. But that's the thing, we don't see that this is maybe a failed system, and maybe we don't need to meditate for 30 years, and maybe we don't need to do many degrees, and maybe we don't have to follow this guru, and maybe we don't have to do anything, because that's it. Maybe we are already there. Maybe we have arrived already. Maybe you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, I would buy the seminar because the other guy is telling me that I'm not in the now. I would buy it because I tell myself I'm not in the now.
Exactly, and that's a very good point, because we put our faith in our thoughts. And our thoughts, they invent the craziest of crazy ideas. Our thoughts, the nature of our thoughts is to tell us, no, you're not good enough. You're not, like everyone else is much better. Everyone else is much more beautiful. Everyone else has much more money. Everyone else has a much better life. That's what the thoughts tell us about us constantly. Like maybe you have some good moments where you have good thoughts, but that's the nature of thought. So if we put our trust into the nature, into such a nature, what results do we get? Exactly that. Then we are very easy and say, okay, how get it now? Okay, great, I go. How can I get 1 million? Okay, I go, you know? But if we put our faith, as I said, not into the thought system and realize we're not that, we don't have to put it anywhere else, your faith. But then you just take it out of the thought system and you see there's presence, there's awareness, that's it. And you entertain that, and then something else can happen, you know? But I said, you know, if let's assume you are in the moment, somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have the 10 steps how to get in the moment. And what happens if you do this exercise? Doesn't it seemingly take you even more out of the moment because you are already there anyway, you see? Because it reinforces the belief that you're not, you know, that's the point.
Yeah, but after I do these 10 steps, I could tell myself now I'm in the moment. So
you could tell yourself, but you would still feel it doesn't feel right, you know?
yeah, I mean, yeah, but this, I mean, it doesn't have to bring me far away from the moment, I would say, because I was wondering, you said like it reinforces, what did you say?
It reinforces like your belief that you're not in the moment.
Yeah, you said that before, like, according to all these self-improvement activities or whatever you do, it reinforces the belief that you are not already there.
Yeah.
Would you say it reinforces this belief more than if I don't do anything?
Yeah, it depends. Like if don't do anything means you're also reinforcing it all the time, then it's the same. You know, because like what's happening like as I said earlier, like, you know, pretending to be a separate entity that we're not, it has, like, it needs ignoring what we are. It needs ignoring that from moment to moment. It needs something that happens from moment to moment and ignoring what's already there, what's already happening. You know, like the thing is, we cannot wrap our minds around what we are. It's not possible. It's like, you know, this example of if your tongue was made out of salt and I gave you salt, you would not taste it. Like the same cannot grasp the same. And that's the whole point. We cannot go, you know, that's the thing, as with the mind, with the tools that we have, we cannot zoom more out. We cannot, like, you know, everything, that's the thing. There's this other sentence. What you are cannot be perceived. So everything, you know, if we think about a camera, so everything is in front of the camera here. And that, you know, what we usually do, this field one, what I talked about is, we pretend that this here is the subject and all of the other things is objects. But however, what is actually the case is that this is also an object. You see? This is also an object. So what we perceive life from object to object, and that's the whole trouble. If we realize that this is also an object because it can be perceived, like everything else here, and maybe something else is like, you know, it's like saying, like, there's something looking, right? There's something seeing, but the eye is not seeing, but there's seeing happening, and the eye is just facilitating the seeing. But there's something, like, you really think, you know, like if you really look in someone's eyes, yeah, from eye to eye, and really look, like, you know, you realize intuitively that it's not the eyes that are looking, it's not, there's something else seeing, not something that's not from this world. Like, I mean, not an alien or something, but that's you. It's the formless, it's coming from somewhere, but it's, the eyes are just facilitating it. Like, you know, people say it's like if you look in someone's eyes, it's like the window to the soul or something. It's like that in a way, you know? Like, it's not like that there's a center behind your head, you know, that's sort of like controlling everything or something, you know? There's, like, you know, I always like the example of, you know, Like if you look at your body, for instance, if each one of you and me were in control of this body to maintain it, we would all pass away after 1 minute, because we would forget to beat our heart, because we're talking right now, we would forget to digest, we would not split all the cells, like, you know, there's some magic happening here, you know, and we usually think we're playing God, we think we're in control of everything, especially of thoughts, like, at the end of the day, you can also see thought is just another, I don't know, body function or brain function or whatever. But it's part of this whole body which is fully autonomous. It works on its own. If we pretend we have control over thoughts, if we pretend we have any control over everything, then maybe, maybe it feels as if, and maybe we act like this and everybody else acts like this, and we take ourselves very seriously. But then it's a lot of effort involved, you know?
Maybe another thing is, if you look at great artists, or especially musicians, they probably didn't get to become so good because they had the best teachers, or booked the best courses, or bought the most expensive guitars. They let it happen from themselves. I think that's the analogy to. Of course it helps. If they had never trained, they wouldn't have got this expertise, but there's no...
It's any...
You
yeah.
mean they had the self-belief, or what do you mean?
Well, they just let it happen.
They just let it happen.
Any great artist, or I don't know any, but many great artists, if you ask them, like, you know, where did you get the inspiration? How were you able to produce such a masterpiece? They would all tell you that it was not me. I was maybe the medium, or I was used to bring it to paper or to any form or to a song, but it was not me, you know. It's like, yeah, as I said, it's just, you know, you don't have to believe anything, you don't have to read any book. It's just, sometimes it's just enough to just look for yourself, you know. But we're so busy with we're so obsessed with thoughts, and we're so busy with thoughts, you know, that we don't have, we cannot take a moment to just look, you know. Because as I said earlier, it's like when we don't see something, we look from it.
Can we, what?
When we don't see something, we're looking from it. Let's say, like, look, we're looking, let's say we are so identified with thoughts that we think we're the thoughts, and that means we don't see the thoughts from outside, but we are the thoughts, so we only see thoughts and we are the thoughts. So we're not able to actually observe them come and go. But if we see thoughts, then we are able to not look from it. You know, as I said the other way around, I said, if you don't see thoughts, then you're looking from it. But if you see thoughts, then you're not looking from it, but you see them. You observe them. And that's you know, yeah, it's a big relief.
But what does it mean for ourselves that, for example, I was not born to be a musician, or I am not a writer? Just what should I do to realize?
Yeah, that you know, that's.
For musicians, they just go their way. They feel it, kind of. Well, I don't know. They don't force it.
I mean, that's you know, it's a very valid question, I think, because that's usually the first thing, you know. It's like, but it's, I think even that question is like, you know, and that's not just you. Like, I think that question comes to us. It's like, now we talked about what we are or what we're not. Like, how can we get there?
No, I mean, sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe. I feel sometimes for what I was born. Sometimes, you know, for why I'm here in the world. But maybe sometimes I don't want to believe.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like, you know, you have to get somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that sort of the question of what do I really want to do, or is it like, you know, because I can, like, I give an example, or maybe you give an example. Like, you know, let's say, like, I'm just trying to understand your question. Is it, for instance, let's say I'm let's say I go into business because it sounds very fancy and I get a lot of money and people, they appreciate me that I have so much money and all this stuff. But then you're in there for 5 years or 10 years and then you realize, but okay, maybe everybody else likes it, but I don't like it at all. But you have never admitted to yourself because you really liked all the attention you got from the others. But then at some point you realize it and you say, actually, I'm not a business person, I'm actually, I don't know, a painter. Yeah, and then you, and as I said, sometimes it's very hard to admit to yourself because then you would be like, oh, but then I lose all the attention from the others, which I have sort of nurtured myself so far. And then if you become a painter, I don't have so much money anymore, I don't have security, the others probably don't appreciate me anymore because they appreciate more my money than who I was or who I am. Do you mean like this kind of?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm in the world to give people joy, for that people feel good, and But then I ask myself, I don't trust myself. I don't know.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage sometimes, right, to do that.
Yeah.
So what you mean is you want to find your purpose
Yeah.
in life. Is that what you mean?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, but like let's go into this example because let's say, as I said, let's say you have a job and you have security and your friends like you for whatever reason, I don't know. But then you feel like, yeah, but it doesn't feel so right to me, and you want to, let's say you want to give joy to people, or you want to, I don't know, in whatever form you want to do, and then let's say, yeah, I don't know, you want to, for this you have to quit your job, and then you take a risk, and you don't have the security, you don't have this, but it feels more like in line with what you want to do. I mean, it depends totally on your situation, right? Let's say if you have savings, then of course you can take the risk maybe and do it. If you don't have savings, maybe you stay in your job and you work part-time on it or something. I think there's a different, but I think my point here is the most important thing, I think, is, to listen to this intuition and not so much to everything else, because at the end of the day, then you live a life for others, but not for yourself, and you will never discover what it could have been if you did it,
So you said thoughts are not ours.
Thoughts.
Thoughts. And intuition, is it
It's also not ours.
not ours?
But but I think there's a big difference. Like language can also be a bit misleading. Everybody has a bit different thing about intuition, let's say. But what I'm saying is, because what we are is 100% perfect. That's it. Like it's beyond perfect. Actually, you cannot define it. It's undefinable, and it's joy, it's love, if you want. So if you say, but if it comes to, let's say, this action figure as what as what's here. If you ask me, okay, listen to your thoughts or listen to intuition, something like this. Obviously, as I said, thoughts are, their nature is something else. It's like a tool, it's very useful. If you don't take it to be yourself, it's very useful. But this intuition can be more like something, as you said, for me that can be like a GPS of what the role of this action figure is. I think we're talking two different things. One is of what you really are, and one is the purpose of this action figure. And the purpose of this action figure, if you ask me, it's taken care of. Like, I don't think there's any accidents in this universe. It's taken care of. You don't actually have to even worry about it, because it's just happening, taking control. Like, the problem sometimes here is that we think we are in control. We think we can decide whether I stay in this job or whether I do this. But if you ask me, I don't think we have, like, we as the action figure don't take the decision. I think it's taken. But yeah, if you ask, should I put my faith into the thoughts, or should I put my faith into this intuition? Then of course intuition. I'll give you one example. Like, I was in hospital twice, like for once quite a long time, and the other time maybe not so long. But for me I realized I was holding on to something very, very firmly. Like, as I said, I want to maybe become like this, or I want to be this. I hold on so firmly. I got signs from life that maybe this is not the right direction. And then I felt like life slapped me to the face and knocked me out and told me this is not the right direction. In these 2 hospital stays, I learned so much. In the moment it happened, it was the worst thing that could have happened to me. But afterwards, after some time, I realized it was the best thing that could have happened, because, as I said, I feel like in this, when we talk on that level, life is giving us signs constantly from all kind of things. Sometimes we're so attached to a certain image that we have about ourselves that we should be, and we forget actually what maybe is really our true path for this action figure. And if we don't listen to those life messages, life will find its way to get you there. Either it's gonna do something nice, a great event, that, I don't know, you get married to some great person, or I don't know, something, you get a child or whatever. But many times it also comes and just puts you in an accident, puts you out of your job, any kind of stuff. You know, it's just like a shock moment. Some people, they just then hold even more on it, they need another shock moment. But some people, they realize, okay, I got it. And maybe that's not the right direction. You know, so yeah, I think maybe it's just about listening, seeing the signs of life. But at the end of the day, and that's from the perspective of the action figure, you know, of, let's say, Benjamin or whatever you are. But there's a whole other level which we talked about today, which is who you are, who we are, and that's the sky. You know, that's never, like, if you look at the sky, it has never been affected by any of the clouds, not by the biggest thunderstorm, not by any airplanes, not by any rocket shooting up the sky. It cannot be affected, and that's the good message. You know, what you are, not as what you take yourself to be, but what you are, that can never be affected by anything. So even if you don't take the right decision for 10 years, it doesn't work. You know, you cannot take the wrong decision. It doesn't work. I think it's a safe place from what we are, but it's not very safe for what we take ourselves to be sometimes.
I think it's interesting that you say you already have this feeling or inner knowing that, you know, giving joy to people or doing something along these lines is what you would like to do or what you feel called to do. And at the same time, I think you probably already feel or are aware of the fact that a lot of the doubts you have are because of social conditioning, or just, you know, a lot of it comes from the outside. So one thing that I like to do is, whenever I notice this kind of thought that is kind of distracting or seems to slow me down or increase my doubts, I just ask, who does this belong to, or where does this come from? And I find that so many times that's perfectly enough to just kind of let it evaporate and center myself in my own, you know, trust in my own intuition. So yeah, I think you probably already know what you want, or you already have like a very clear sense of direction with that. So yeah, just keep going.
Yeah, that's also nice what you said, because, you know, in your example, it's like, you know, if you were not if you were like sort of lost in the thoughts, if it's like you, the thoughts, you would actually not even be able to do that. You know what you said, that you can just see where does that come from. It's not me, obviously. Okay, you know, that's a beautiful example, because if let's say the parasite is so strong in us, then we would, without hesitation, we would take that as our thought, and then I think that's very hard. Then you can actually not. Then you have to put your faith in your thoughts, because it's you. You know, you cannot ignore who you are. So that's I think that's a great example. But if you have this, if you can allow the space where you see, it's a thought coming, and the most important thing is, you know, listening to this, or okay, I get it theoretically, but the main thing is not sitting here and then going and doing something else, but in the moment that thought comes, you know, when you're sitting home alone, or if you're in the city, then to realize it, that's the beauty, that's the art, I think, you know. Like, because, like, I think awareness plays such a big role in this, because, you know, we are all very smart people, like sitting in a room like this, you know, reading a book, listening to something, or doing meditation. But then when life is happening, you know, I mean, it's always happening, but when life is happening, that's sort of when it counts, like on some level, you know. At the end of the day, like, you know, we cannot increase our awareness, because that's what we are. But yeah, it's sort of, you know, being aware of the things, and when we see them, we cannot look from them. What time is it, do you know?
I have one more question. Because when you said like sometimes you know what your purpose is in life or what you really want to do, are these situations where you just get the feeling or the intuition, whatever? Or are these situations where you're giving joy to people right in that moment? So where you feel like, oh, this is like...
Normally it's when I'm in my place, in good circumstances, where I feel good, and then I kind of hear what I feel, my intuition, and then I know, like, it's kind of, now I know.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, I was just curious. I was like
yeah.
thinking what kind of situations are this where you really get the strong impression.
Do you sense something in the air here? As not a smell or something. But you know, like from my experience, and I can sense something is when you speak. I don't know, like this. What we're speaking about. There's something. I don't know in the air, but there's some kind of calming energy. You know, I don't know if you feel that, but. If you don't feel it, then don't try to make it up.
Fake it till you make it.
Oh yeah, I feel it.
Also something I find very interesting in this, as it relates to this topic, is when we start to kind of listen to an inner calling or intuition or whatever you want to call it, and we start to maybe take steps in that direction, we are surrounded by people that don't get it because they are strongly identified with, their role in society and, their personality and stuff. They will always try to kind of drag us down. So it's very important to surround us with, also people that kind of get it and invite us and encourage us to kind of keep going and keep exploring. Because there's this, isn't it, I think it's lobsters, when you put a bunch of lobsters in a pot with water and start boiling them, as soon as the first lobsters start crawling out, the others will drag them back in. So, ultimately I think a lot of people are like lobsters. We shouldn't let them drag us down.
But it's very true, and I think, with your example, I think sometimes life is sort of expecting from you to take the first step, because then, in this example is when you take the first step and you make it out of the pot, then you realize that there's a whole new world with other lobsters that are free, maybe, and that's sort of the beautiful thing. That's also from my experience, I was sort of also in that situation a few years ago, where I quit, from some perspective, a great job, to something where I didn't have anything, I didn't know what's going to happen. And then I realized there's a whole, so many doors opening, so many like-minded people, so many things happening. But yeah, sometimes it takes the courage, to take that step. And then, that's happening actually not just with the job, what we were saying, Florian, but it's happening with so many things. We have an insight. We think, oh wow, I have found out something, but then you want to share with your friends, they're like, are you crazy? That's crazy, you cannot be. And then you're disencouraged, you think, oh, maybe I was crazy, that was a crazy thought, and then you become small again, But I think there's like-minded people for any passion you have, for anything you have, there's always like-minded people. It's just a matter, as you said, whether you surround yourself with them or maybe not, But yeah.